On the 12th day of the 12th month, 2012, I got a call that changed my life forever. I am from Kosovo. I am an international student in Turkey. That day, my sister called me and told me that my father was not feeling well. That same day, I flew to Kosovo. Just when I arrived, the very first question that I asked was, "How is my father doing?" They told me, "He's not that well, but he's waiting for you." So we got in the car, and the very first thing that I noticed was that my cousins were all dressed up in black. I noticed that they were stressed and they were constantly texting. So just when we entered my city, my cousin patted me on my shoulder and told me, "Honey, your father is not feeling that well, so expect the worst." So at that moment, I was scared. I didn't understand what she meant by that. So then soon after, 5 minutes later, I was in front of the doors of my house. There were around 200 people. Soon I recognized the face of my mom, my sister, my brother, and my best friend. They were crying. And that moment, I knew that the worst had happened. My father had passed away. So then I was confused. I thought, how did I let it go up to this point? My heart started pounding faster. I started shedding in tears. Literally, the world turned upside down for me. Soon after, my mom invited me to sit down with her. In our house full of guests, she told me my father had been fighting the battle of pancreatic cancer. Can you imagine yourself as an 18-year-old going through such an experience? Then I started having these flashbacks during my staying in the US. There was this time when we used to Skype with my family at least once a week, but that started becoming less and less. And I always thought it was my fault because I was too busy traveling and just enjoying the American life. I come from a prominent family. Both of my parents are doctors. So I remember this time when we were Skyping in United States. My parents told me that they're in Germany. They went for a medical symposium. What later turned out to be my father's first chemotherapy session, because he was getting treatment in Germany. My host parents, during my staying in the US, were my best friends. They taught me how to become confident and secure. Their trust in me enabled me to understand the power of my own choices, as if they knew what would happen in the future. Soon after, the day of the end of my adventure in the US came soon. I had to go back from US to Kosovo. I was both happy and sad. 10 months in the same airport, I saw the faces of my mom, my sister, my brother, and my father. But that time, the very first thing that I noticed was that my father was looking thin, tired, as if he had lost 10 kilograms. Soon my family told me that he went through a surgery, but he got over it. That summer, I realized that my ultimate dream was to become a diplomat. I wanted to build peace in the world. I wanted to ease relations between countries. I wanted to show the world that through interaction and negotiation, we can actually solve real issues. But there was another thing to that. I also wanted to study abroad. My host parents and my parents both encouraged me to do so, as if there was no problem in my family at that time. So then I started applying to Turkey, Greece, and United States. And as a matter of fact, I got 3 full scholarships in 3 different countries. But then I remember my father encouraging me and insisting me on going to Turkey because it was the closest and the easiest to travel to. So then I chose Turkey. And then I went there. Again, in the same year, new people, new language, new experiences. So much thing to get excited about. So here I was in Kosovo, in my room, overwhelmed by all these clues that I never understood. And now I had to deal with a tough choice. Do I want to stay in Kosovo with my family, or do I want to go back to Turkey and pursue my ultimate dream? And then I started thinking about my father. My father was a pediatrician. He was my own superhero. He was not only a successful doctor, he was very funny, he was loving. He was the first person I would turn to if I had any problem. He was my personal psychologist. He was the perfect husband for my mother. I had never seen a man love and encourage his wife as my father did. He was a super dad for my sister, my brother, and me. I want you to think about the person who you trust the most in your community. The person who you trust the life of your child. Well, that's my father. I am still privileged whenever I walk in my hometown because I randomly get stopped by people telling me, your father saved the life of my daughter. Your father saved the life of my son. He healed my son. And this appreciation means a lot to me. But still, when I lost him, I felt despair, deep lost. I almost lost my confidence. But still, I had a realization. I remember that one he taught me that life is not about things that happen to you. Life is about attitude toward life. It was as if he gave me all the tools to overcome this situation. One time, I even felt that I was the luckiest daughter to have had him for 18 years. So then, having all these things in my mind, I decided to go back to Turkey 10 days later after I lost him. It was the hardest thing that I had ever done in my life. As if it was not enough, 4 months later, the youngest sister of my father, which had recently moved to our home to help my family cope with the tragic loss of my father, had been diagnosed with cancer. At that moment, I started thinking, what was I doing wrong to deserve such pain? What is the purpose of life? Why do we live? Who determines our fate? And then I started thinking, I'm not going to cry over my bed and sit back without doing anything. I want to find out what was going on with my family. So then I started doing research. The very first thing that I noticed was that cancer had become so common in my country to the point that it was considered very normal. People were dying. So during my research, I found out that because of the war that we had in 1999 with Serbia, in Kosovo there's high levels of radioactivity, high levels of residuals, uranium, radium. Actually, 1 in 4 families is being affected by cancer. So life did not stop, obviously. Grief became resilience. I became resilient. I knew that at this point, I could not help my country grow, but that I knew that if I improve myself, I will improve my country someday. So then I started traveling. I started going to international conferences. I would go 3 to 4 times a year just to connect with people from different diversity, just to build on peace in the world. Last year, I went to European Youth Parliament in Serbia. In 1991, there was a war between Kosovo and Serbia. Kosovo and Serbia are both neighbors in Southeastern Europe. Even while I know I'm a young delegate and my stance on creating peace is really strong, but when it comes to Serbia, well, I cannot be that objective in that topic. Because each time I meet them, in my head, I hear people's stories of how their houses got bombarded, how they lost their loved ones, how their life was ruined because of the war. So I obviously don't open up endless debates with them, but at least the very things that I do is Whenever I get asked by Serbians, where are you from, I sarcastically say, I am from the coolest country in Southeastern Europe. So there was I in committee work in Serbia, and there comes this guy, he entered our room. When he entered, I was totally distracted. He had bald head, he was walking on crutches, and he looked pale. During our break time, I noticed that nobody would go and talk to him. And then I thought, it's mostly because young people have prejudices and stereotypes for people who look ill. So then I went and I sat down by him, and then I asked, what is your name? He told me his name is Slav. And then he started telling me that he was a delegate for over 2 years, but recently he had been diagnosed with bone cancer. So then he started talking about his dreams, his traveling, his passions, and he was just beautiful. He was this cheerful guy, full of life, full of energy. But me, deep inside, I knew that the battle he was facing, because I saw firsthand how cancer eats away a healthy body. In the end of our conversation, he even told me, thank you for being tolerant and patient with me. And then I had a realization. He was Serbian. And then I thought, is he really my enemy just because he's Serbian? I felt empathy. I was deeply moved. I realized that in the eyes of death, we are all one. We evaporate our differences because pain is an equalizer. To me, peace came about because I traveled. I am only 20 years old. In the past 3 years, I have lived in 3 different countries, 3 different continents. Besides Kosovo, I lived in the United States as an exchange student. Soon after, I became an international student in Izmir of Turkey. And lastly, I was an exchange student in Germany at university level. I have been able to understand and create a more sophisticated way of understanding the world's culture. Humanity. I know that if you have been told for your entire life that someone is your enemy, that's what you will think about. Because every time you will see them, they are a reminder of your pain and injustices you went through. But I promise that if you take your time to hear their stories and allow yourself to understand what they care about their family, about how they see the world, you will see that your stories and their stories are not as different. I still haven't found the peace formula, but I can say that connecting with human beings and reaching across differences is definitely a step forward. Thank you.